Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Tomorrow marks the 60th anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas on November 22, 1963. I spoke with Oscar-winning actress Natalie Portman at the Washington, D.C. premiere of her 2016 film Jackie at the Newseum.
Her voice is very specific, and she had an accent that really told a lot about where she came from, or her both where she grew up and then the school she went to. So it was a lot of work to watch all the old interviews and White House tour and try and perfect that. It was interesting in a way, because when the camera is really close to you, you're also close to the camera operator, and so even in scenes when you're alone, you have someone to sort of communicate with, and he was very emotionally engaged and part of it. So it was really wonderful to get to interact with someone even when I was in scenes alone. I have a film called A Tale of Love and Darkness that I directed that actually came out in August. So it was very nice to get to be here with it, and we were at the Washington Jewish Film Festival, so it was great to get to show it here.
Ms. Portman, so you already talked about sort of how you mastered recreating the voice, but more mentally wise, how did you get yourself into that space where you almost have to be staggering around, almost catatonic, some of those scenes? Like, how do you mentally get in that space?
Well, it is such an incredibly traumatic, tragic, violent event that happened to her, as the film takes place in the days just following the assassination of JFK. So it's, absolutely what you would imagine emotionally, that it would range between intense grief, disorientation, anger, dark humor, and it sort of allows all these different aspects of grief to come out.
And as a expectant mother of yourself, take me into that scene where you have to go tell Caroline and John. That's one of the most powerful scenes.
Well, it's devastating, and it's one of the things about the film that we've all obviously considered the JFK assassination a lot in our history books, and there's obviously parts of the history that we don't have to think about and have not considered, like what was that moment like when she had to tell the kids. And it's just devastating, and it was one of the things, I remember when I read the script for the first time, I was just crying reading it, because it's such an awful thing to have to imagine telling a kid. Well, something that I learned from the script when I read it, which I was so surprised about, was that she had such a role in crafting the legacy herself, that she took such a strong narrative authorship in the whole process, which is really astonishing, and especially that she had that presence of mind in those days, that she was going through incredible turmoil herself, to have the presence of mind to try and author a legacy is very impressive. I didn't have a ton of time to prepare, so it was quite fast, but it was very intense, and I worked with a great dialect coach who we just listened to the tapes over and over and over again, and watched the White House tour over and over and over, and rehearsed it so that by the time I got to set it, I could just not think about it. Well, I think that Jackie was one of the first, maybe along with Eleanor Roosevelt, who had a real agenda of her own in the White House, namely, creating sort of a cultural legacy in, for the country, creating a spotlight on artists, having these objects that had historical meaning in the White House, and preserving buildings that were meaningful to the history of the country. And since then, of course, First Ladies, and hopefully in the future First Spouses, will also be this sort of extra gift that the country gets when they get their president, that they, it's not someone who's elected, it's not someone who's an official role, but they're still working to help our country become a better place. I hope for the best for our country, I think, as all of us do, and I have faith that our country can get through a very divided moment.
I also spoke on the red carpet with director Pablo Larraín.
Well, there are different time layers in the film. One is based on a real interview that actually happened right a week after the assassination of President Kennedy, and that interview allowed us to sort of coin the Camelot myth, and we also brought a lot of information, from fiction. Noah wrote it, and it's just from different sources and different ideas. And there's also a very well-known and particular White House tour that she did in 1961. After the restoration, she showed to the American people how was the White House from the inside, and the restoration she did. So it was beautiful material, and combined with the true events, it creates a beautiful illusion. I mean, there's things that you can replace and things that you can't. We actually built the White House in studios in Paris, but then when you are outside, you gotta be in DC. This is not replaceable. The city is just one, and the buildings and the city and the sort of the ambient in here is unique, and it has history and it has weight, and it's and I love the light of the city. We shot a lot of exteriors, and we had a beautiful, amazing days, and it was very interesting. Yeah. Of course, please. You can replace the sea. It's just one.
Hey, sir. Jason from WTOP.
Hey, how are you?
Great film. Loved it.
Thank you.
I love how you intersperse the archival footage with the actors, but sometimes it's done cuts. But the one that I really loved and want to know was when she's staring out the car window and it's a reflection of the crowd. Is that the archival reflection?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Tell me where that idea to come to. That's genius. How'd you think of that?
Well, because during the funeral, there were some camera that they were making shots from the car, so it was very simple to create that reflection. It's a very simple thing to do. It just feels very well, and it's very well played by Natalie, and the footage was amazing. So yeah.
I noticed a lot of not only the car reflection, but there's a lot of mirrors. Like there's like the 3 mirrored thing when she's putting the hat on. Is it sort of like is that something you're going for? Is because she's reflecting on things, or I noticed a lot of mirrors. I'm curious.
Well, mirrors are essential to cinema, and mirrors are. Every camera has a mirror, and especially if you work on film. And Jackie was a fashion icon. So I'm telling you that she looked at the mirror, and also I think a mirror is also a beautiful way to see a reflection that is not always the reality. A mirror can create a very obliquous reflection from reality, and that's where you want to be.
Like the double image is something similar.
Mirrors are essential to cinema and to movie making. Yeah.
Absolutely. Tell me about sort of the overall tone. Like the music itself is it's pretty eerie sometimes. Explain how you sort of set out to create sort of the more nightmarish qualities, because it is a historical document in many ways, but it's also you're almost reflecting her mental state with some of that stuff.
Well, there's. When you go to memory, there's memory can be very particular and tough and strange, and I think that's what we try to do, to create a space of memory, and that has elements that are unsettling, are more beautiful, and just combining different layers of memory that would bring, and music there is essential. Mika Levy did a beautiful, amazing work there, and I don't know, man. Let's see how it plays.
Just a final question. Just talk about working with Natalie herself. I mean, how did you? Was it originally going to be Aronofsky and Rachel, and then that fell through, and then you jumped on, or take me sort of how you got involved and how you chose Natalie Portman.
Well, I was invited by Darren Aronofsky, and then more people got involved, and yeah, I thought Natalie was essential to the project. She has not only the beauty and the elegance and the sophistication that Jackie had, but also she has something that I think is essential. I think Jackie Kennedy was a very mysterious person on her eyes, and I think Natalie has that too. And that's why there's so many close-ups in the film. But I rather have the people to go and discover it. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I next spoke with producer Mickey Liddell. We're here with one of the producers of Jackie. How did you get involved with the project from the start?
I got involved after the script came to me, and it had Pablo Larraín and Natalie, and a huge fan of Pablo Larraín's and the club, and I loved everything he'd ever done. So I couldn't wait to meet him. And obviously Natalie, you just have to say Natalie Portman. I would probably so that's it. So of course I was so honored to be involved.
That's so cool. Did you also, wasn't Darren Aronofsky was one of the producers
Darren
too, right? Talk about how much exactly he was involved in this one. Because it does have a little bit of an eerie feel at times. It's nightmarish like a Black Swan or something, but how much was he involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think you're exactly right. I think he was involved really early on with the script and getting Natalie, he'd worked with her in Black Swan, getting her involved, and Pablo, he'd seen his movie and got him involved. So I think in the beginning stages, it was so important to find all the right people, so he was really involved.
And then how about in terms of just trying to cut in I love all the archival footage you guys use, and Pablo was just talking about how when she's looking out that window and it's reflecting the actual crowd of the,
favorite shot.
It's my favorite shot in the movie. Why is that your favorite shot? Because I agree.
Yeah, and that's the actual crowd that was there at the time. So it's watching Natalie sit back and know that in her mind she's thinking about actually being Jackie and seeing all those people that are grieving. She's taking on all the pain of America at the time and everything. And to watch Natalie do it, she just loses herself. She just becomes Jackie. And in that moment, to know that the real footage is going by her is really incredible.
Yeah. How much of the final film, I've seen it twice already, and I want to see it again, but how much of it is, reflective of the original script? Was there anything added? Was that framing device always there? How closely is it to the original one you saw?
Yeah, I think Noah wrote the script and it was amazing. But yeah, I think Pablo added a lot of the framing story, and also Natalie added a lot of dialogue just through a lot of reading that she did. So yeah, it's always, it changes, but it was definitely a joint effort by all of them.
Is there a scene where you said the window reflection is your favorite shot, but is there one that got you in the gut emotionally most? Did you tear up at a certain scene with when she goes in and talks to the kids, or any of them? I mean,
actually, my again, I've seen it so many times, so I always catch me on what day, and I'll tell you my favorite scene because there's been so many. But when she goes in and stands up and says she's going to walk the day of the funeral, I think that's one of the most cinematic, movie experiences I've ever had. Even not even being involved, I just sat back and said, "Who are you?" Not only is it Natalie Portman as Jackie Kennedy, but Jackie Kennedy standing up for herself and saying, "I don't care what happens, I'm going for it, and I'm going to have a great funeral for my husband, and anybody can walk or not." And I just think it's such a powerful woman, and I'm so proud of her in that moment. It's incredible.
Awesome. Finally, I spoke with screenwriter Noah Oppenheim.
The script was informed by a ton of research into various histories, works of journalism, oral histories that the Kennedy Library stored. They interviewed a lot of the first-person witnesses to this period of time, and they've kept them up in the library in Boston. There's a lot written about it, and so I kind of dove in and drew from all of it. I drew from a variety of different accounts written by people who were there, written by people who interviewed them, and then I, of course, filled in the blanks with some creative liberty and imagination, which is where the fun part comes in. I've been fascinated by Jackie Kennedy my whole life. My mother was a big admirer of her. She saved all the newspapers and magazines, and I used to look through them when I was a little kid. And I'm just a student of politics and American history, and I've just always admired her. It's definitely that she understood that she could write her husband's legacy. And she set out to do that in the days after the assassination, in the way that she managed the funeral and in the interview that she gave to Life magazine. And she had a really astute understanding of how to use the power of the press and the power of imagery to influence how people would look at her husband and remember him. Yeah, it's always tough to write about people who are really well known, but the beauty of Jackie is that she, in many ways, is a mystery. People think they know her superficially, but very few people, I think, have managed to capture who she was as a human being. Well, I mean, people have done countless television shows, films, written probably hundreds of books about the Kennedy assassination. So your challenge is that people think they know what happened during that period of time. But what I tried to do was by framing everything through her point of view, through Jackie's point of view, create a fresh perspective on events that seem familiar, but and a side of the story that hasn't been told yet. The biggest surprise for me was when I learned that she had in fact coined the Camelot mythology in the week after her husband's assassination. I thought that the Kennedy administration had always been referred to as Camelot, or from the time he was campaigning, and I didn't realize that she was the one who invented that, and she only did it after his death. Well, I think, anytime you can kind of draw on the authenticity of a real location, I think it infuses the film with something you can't necessarily recreate on a soundstage. So I think we came to Washington at the end of the shoot, and to do that funeral march outside and recreate it in the very places where it actually took place, I think was really special. I think the strength that she displayed during this period of time, when you think about how young she was, when you think about the trauma that she endured, is truly extraordinary. And I think it puts her in the pantheon of American heroes, that she was able to help the country get through this and move forward in the way that she did while dealing with all of the personal pain that she was going through. Yeah, I think she set the tone. I mean, I think the whole country was looking at her for cues on how to behave. And I think she comported herself with such extraordinary dignity that, I think that's one of the many reasons why she's remembered so fondly to this day. Well, I hope they come away with an appreciation for her extraordinary strength. She went through an unimaginable horror. She lost her husband. She had to shepherd 2 young children through that, but she also had to sort of bear the grief of the entire nation on her shoulders, and she did that, and she helped the whole country heal.
Hello, sir. Jason
Hi.
with WTOP. One of the things I want to commend you on is, so many biopics, I think they just try to bite off too much, and they try to tell the whole life story, and it's the trap. But I love that you took such a narrow slice of the 4 days, and then flash back to it a little bit. But talk about sort of the decision to do that and focus on that because you could have told a whole life story, but explain why that's more powerful.
Yeah, I think I think it's really hard to try to tell I think it's really hard to try to tell the story of a person's life by jamming everything that ever happened to them into one film. I think it's far more illuminating when it comes to their character and who they were to sort of pick a moment in time or a couple moments in time where they were going through a particularly intense crucible, because oftentimes when we're under the most pressure, that's when our real character shines through. And clearly in this week, it was one of the toughest periods in her life, and people were able to see what she was made of.
Was the framing device of the magazine interview, was that in the script from the start? Did you guys kind of add that afterwards? I thought I heard.
No, that was from the first draft onwards. Yeah, I always thought that interview was a good way to kind of bookend the film.
Did I see that you used to be a senior producer on the Today Show?
I currently run the Today Show.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. How much? Well, there you go. How much do you think that sort of informed those interview scenes? It was almost like a chess match with Billy Crudup and her, and how much to reveal and all that. So, how much do you think that sort of your life?
My primary job in life has always been as a journalist, so those were especially fun scenes to write. I can't say that every interview we do is that entertaining and that much of a back and forth, but it definitely my life experience definitely informed that.
And final question, what was it? The old John Ford line in Liberty Valance when he says, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Yeah.
Compare that in the Camelot terms. How much of those interviews do you think was consciously myth building of the character, and how much do you think just happened? Was it planned out, you think?
I think she was incredibly savvy and knew exactly what she was doing and understood that this was her last opportunity to define how her husband would be remembered, and I think she came up with a really powerful metaphor in Camelot that has obviously stuck with us for decades.
Why do you think that's the one she chose,
I think by making reference to something in popular culture like Arthurian legend, it sticks in people's minds far more so than if she had just listed a bunch of policy accomplishments. It just has a greater emotional resonance. So.
Congrats, sir. You definitely pulled the sword from that stone, so thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.